The morning sun cast long shadows across the castle walls as Thomas adjusted his leather belt and checked his sword one final time. He had been a royal guard for 8 years now, and today felt different somehow. The air seemed heavier, filled with whispers and worried glances from the other servants who hurried past him in the corridors. Thomas was not like the other guards. While they were content with their duties of standing at gates and patrolling walls, he took his responsibility seriously. Perhaps too seriously, some said. He noticed things others missed. The way Lady Margaret's hands trembled when she spoke of the upcoming royal visit, how the kitchen maids gossiped about strange sounds coming from the upper chambers at night, and most importantly, how Princess Camilla had been acting lately. Princess Camilla was the king's youngest daughter, known throughout the kingdom for her kind heart and beautiful singing voice. She was 22 years old, with long golden hair that caught the sunlight like spun silk, and eyes as blue as the deepest ocean. But Thomas had noticed changes in her over the past few months. She seemed distracted during court sessions, often staring out windows with a dreamy expression. She would disappear for hours at a time, claiming she was reading in the library or walking in the gardens, but Thomas had checked both places and found them empty. Today, the king had called an emergency meeting. Foreign dignitaries were arriving tomorrow for peace negotiations, and security needed to be perfect. Thomas stood in the Great Hall alongside 20 other guards as Captain Morrison gave them their assignments. The captain was a stern man with gray hair and scars from many battles. His voice echoed off the stone walls as he spoke. "The safety of our royal family depends on each of you doing your job properly," Captain Morrison said, his eyes scanning each guard's face. "We have received reports of possible threats. No one enters the castle without proper identification. No one moves through the halls without being questioned. And most importantly, we must ensure that every member of the royal family is accounted for at all times." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. Something was definitely wrong. He raised his hand and stepped forward. "Captain, what kind of threats are we talking about?" Morrison's expression darkened. "There are rumors of spies within our walls. Someone has been passing information to our enemies about the king's plans. We suspect someone close to the royal family is involved." The other guards began murmuring among themselves, but Thomas remained silent. His mind was already working, thinking about all the strange things he had observed. Could Princess Camilla be involved in something dangerous? The thought seemed impossible, but he had learned not to dismiss any possibility when it came to matters of security. After the meeting, Thomas was assigned to patrol the east wing of the castle, which included the royal family's private quarters. This was unusual. Typically, only the most senior guards were given this responsibility. As he walked through the marble corridors, his footsteps echoing softly, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The east wing was quieter than usual. Most of the servants were preparing for tomorrow's arrival of the foreign guests, and the royal family was attending various meetings throughout the day. Thomas checked each room systematically, ensuring windows were secure and looking for anything out of place. Everything seemed normal until he reached the corridor leading to Princess Camilla's chambers. There was something different about this hallway. The air felt warmer, and he could hear faint sounds coming from behind the princess's door. Thomas paused, listening carefully. It sounded like voices, two people talking in hushed tones. This was strange because he had been told that Princess Camilla was supposed to be in the music room practicing for tomorrow's ceremony. Thomas approached the door slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of his sword. The voices became clearer as he got closer. One was definitely Princess Camilla's melodic voice, but the other was deeper, masculine. A man was in her private chambers, and from the tone of their conversation, this was not an official meeting. His training told him to announce himself and enter immediately. Any unauthorized person in the royal quarters was a serious security breach. But something made him hesitate. The voices didn't sound threatening or urgent. Instead, they sounded intimate, affectionate. Thomas felt his heart sink as he realized what he might be witnessing. He pressed his ear closer to the door, trying to make out what they were saying. Princess Camilla was speaking softly about tomorrow's ceremony, expressing worry about how her father would react to something. The man's voice was reassuring, telling her that everything would work out, that they just needed to be patient a little longer. Thomas stepped back from the door, his mind racing. If Princess Camilla was meeting secretly with a man, it could mean many things. Perhaps she was planning to elope, which would be scandalous but not treasonous. Or perhaps this man was connected to the spy network Captain Morrison had mentioned. Either way, Thomas knew he had a duty to report what he had discovered. But as he stood there in the empty corridor, Thomas found himself conflicted. He had known Princess Camilla since she was a child. He had watched her grow into a kind, intelligent young woman who cared deeply about her people. The idea that she could be involved in anything harmful to the kingdom seemed impossible, yet the evidence of his own ears suggested that she was hiding something significant. The voices inside the room grew quieter, and Thomas heard footsteps approaching the door. He quickly moved away, ducking into an alcove just as the door handle began to turn. His heart pounded as he waited to see who would emerge from Princess Camilla's chambers, knowing that whatever he witnessed next would change everything. The door opened slowly, and Princess Camilla stepped out first. She looked around carefully before gesturing for someone to follow. Thomas held his breath as a tall figure emerged from her chambers. The man was wearing simple brown clothes, the kind worn by merchants or travelers. He had dark hair and appeared to be around 30 years old. What shocked Thomas most was that this man was completely unfamiliar. He was not a member of the court, not a diplomat, and certainly not someone who should have access to the princess's private rooms. The stranger kissed Camilla's hand gently before moving down the corridor in the opposite direction from where Thomas was hiding. Princess Camilla watched him go with an expression of such tenderness that Thomas felt like he was intruding on something deeply personal. She stood there for several moments after the man disappeared around the corner, touching the spot on her hand where he had kissed her. Thomas waited until Princess Camilla went back into her room before emerging from his hiding place. His mind was spinning with questions and concerns. Who was this mysterious man? How long had these secret meetings been going on? And most importantly, was the princess in danger? He decided to follow the stranger, keeping a safe distance as the man made his way through the castle's winding corridors. The stranger seemed to know his way around very well, which was another troubling sign. He moved confidently, avoiding the main hallways where guards were posted and taking routes that only someone familiar with the castle's layout would know. Thomas followed him down a narrow staircase that led to the castle's lower levels. These areas were used mainly for storage and were rarely patrolled. The stranger stopped at a heavy wooden door and knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. Someone opened the door from the inside and the stranger quickly slipped through. Thomas could hear muffled voices but couldn't make out what they were saying. He positioned himself near a stack of old barrels where he could observe the door without being seen. After about 20 minutes, the door opened again, and the stranger emerged with 2 other men. Thomas recognized one of them as Jakob, a baker who delivered bread to the castle twice a week. The other was completely unknown to him. All 3 men spoke in hushed tones before separating and leaving through different exits. Thomas felt a growing sense of unease. What he had initially thought might be a simple romantic affair was beginning to look like something much more serious. The fact that Princess Camilla's secret lover was meeting with other men in hidden parts of the castle suggested some kind of organized activity. Could this be the spy network Captain Morrison had warned about? He made his way back toward the royal quarters, his mind heavy with the weight of what he had discovered. As he walked, he tried to think of innocent explanations for what he had witnessed. Perhaps the stranger was a poet or artist whom Princess Camilla was secretly patronizing. Maybe he was a messenger bringing news from a distant relative. But the secretive behavior and the meeting in the castle's basement suggested something far more significant. When Thomas reached the east wing again, he found Princess Camilla in the music room, just as she was supposed to be. She was sitting at the harpsichord, playing a melancholy melody. Her golden hair fell in waves around her shoulders, and she wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes. To anyone else, she would have appeared to be exactly where she was meant to be, practicing for tomorrow's ceremony. But Thomas could see the subtle signs that others might miss. Her hands trembled slightly as she played, and she kept glancing toward the windows as if expecting someone. There were small details. A slight disarray in her hair as if it had been hastily arranged, and a faint flush in her cheeks that suggested recent excitement or anxiety. Princess Camilla noticed Thomas standing in the doorway and smiled at him warmly. "Good afternoon, Thomas. How are the preparations going for tomorrow?" Her voice was steady and cheerful, giving no hint of what had transpired in her chambers just an hour earlier. Thomas felt a pang of admiration for her composure. even as his concern for her safety grew stronger. "Everything is proceeding smoothly, Your Highness," Thomas replied, bowing respectfully. "The captain wants to ensure that all members of the royal family are properly protected during the ceremony." Something flickered in Princess Camilla's eyes at the mention of protection, but her smile remained in place. "I appreciate everyone's dedication to our safety. These are certainly uncertain times." Thomas seized the opportunity to probe a little deeper. "Your Highness, have you noticed anything unusual lately? Any strangers around the castle or anything that seemed out of place?" Princess Camilla's fingers paused on the keys for just a moment before resuming their melody. "No, nothing unusual. Why do you ask?" "There have been reports of possible security threats. We want to make sure everyone is aware and taking proper precautions." The princess nodded thoughtfully. "I will certainly be careful. Thank you for your concern, Thomas." As Thomas left the music room, he felt more conflicted than ever. Princess Camilla's reaction had confirmed his suspicions that she was hiding something, but her demeanor suggested that whatever was happening, she didn't view it as a threat to the kingdom. Either she was naive about the true nature of her involvement, or Thomas was misunderstanding the situation entirely. He spent the rest of the afternoon continuing his patrol duties, but his thoughts kept returning to what he had witnessed. By evening, he had made a difficult decision. His loyalty to the royal family required him to report what he had seen, but he would approach Captain Morrison privately first. Perhaps there was more to this situation than met the eye, and jumping to conclusions could have serious consequences for everyone involved. As the sun set behind the castle walls, Thomas prepared for what he knew would be one of the most challenging conversations of his career. The safety of the kingdom might depend on the choices he made in the coming hours. Thomas found Captain Morrison in his office late that evening, reviewing security plans for the next day's ceremony by candlelight. The captain looked up as Thomas knocked on the doorframe, his weathered face showing the strain of the day's preparations. "Thomas, what brings you here so late?" Morrison asked, setting down his quill and gesturing for the younger guard to enter. Thomas closed the door behind him and took a deep breath. "Captain, I need to report something, but I'm not sure how to interpret what I saw." Morrison's expression became more serious. "Tell me everything." Thomas recounted his discovery of the stranger in Princess Camilla's chambers, the secret meeting in the basement, and his observations of the princess's behavior afterward. He spoke carefully, trying to present only facts without adding his own interpretations or emotions to the report. When Thomas finished, Captain Morrison sat in silence for several long moments, his fingers drumming against the wooden desk. Finally, he looked up with an expression that surprised Thomas. It wasn't shock or anger, but something closer to sadness. "Thomas, what I'm about to tell you must never leave this room," Morrison said quietly. "We've been aware of Princess Camilla's situation for some time now." Thomas felt his world shift slightly. "You knew about the stranger?" "His name is Marcus. He's not a spy or a threat to the kingdom. He's something much more complicated." Morrison stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkened courtyard. "He's the son of a blacksmith from the village. Princess Camilla met him 6 months ago when she was visiting the orphanage in town as part of her charitable work." The captain turned back to face Thomas. "They fell in love. It's that simple and that complicated. Marcus is a good man, honest, hardworking, and devoted to the princess, but he's also a commoner with no title, no wealth, and no political connections." Thomas struggled to process this information. But the meetings in the basement, the other men... Marcus has been trying to find a way to prove himself worthy of the princess's hand. The men you saw him with are helping him establish a business. Jakob the baker is his cousin, and they're working together to create a network of shops that would make Marcus wealthy enough to at least request an audience with the king. The revelation hit Thomas like a physical blow. Everything he had interpreted as suspicious was actually the desperate attempt of a young man to elevate his station enough to court the woman he loved. "Does the king know?" Morrison shook his head grimly. "That's where the situation becomes dangerous. The king has already begun negotiations for Princess Camilla's marriage to Prince Ferdinand of the neighboring kingdom. The alliance would secure peace between our lands and strengthen both our economies." Thomas understood immediately why this was such a serious problem. If the king discovers that Princess Camilla is in love with someone else, especially a commoner, it would destroy the marriage alliance and potentially lead to war. Morrison finished. But there's more. Princess Camilla doesn't know about her father's negotiations. She believes she still has time to find a way to make her relationship with Marcus acceptable to the court. The captain returned to his desk and sat down heavily. I've been trying to figure out how to handle this situation without breaking the princess's heart or endangering the kingdom. Tomorrow's ceremony is crucial because Prince Ferdinand will be among the foreign dignitaries attending. The king plans to announce the engagement. Thomas felt a deep sympathy for everyone involved. Princess Camilla was about to have her world shattered. Marcus would lose the woman he loved, and the king would have to make an impossible choice between his daughter's happiness and his kingdom's security. "What do you want me to do?" Thomas asked. Morrison looked at him thoughtfully. "I need you to continue your regular duties, but also keep a close eye on Princess Camilla tomorrow. If she learns about the engagement announcement before the ceremony, she might do something drastic. We can't have her running away or creating a scene in front of the foreign diplomats." Thomas nodded, understanding the delicate balance they needed to maintain. "And after tomorrow? I don't know," Morrison admitted. "I've been hoping that somehow a solution would present itself, but time is running out. The king is a good man, but he's also a king. His duty to the kingdom comes before personal feelings, even his daughter's." As Thomas prepared to leave, Morrison called him back. "There's one more thing you should know. Princess Camilla is not naive about the political realities of her position. She understands what her marriage means for the kingdom. Her relationship with Marcus isn't rebellion. It's her one chance to experience love before duty takes over completely." Thomas left the captain's office with a heavy heart. The situation was far more complex than he had imagined, and there seemed to be no good solution. As he made his final rounds of the castle that night, he thought about love, duty, and the impossible choices that people in power had to make. When he passed by Princess Camilla's chambers, he could hear soft music coming from within. She was playing the harpsichord again, but this time the melody was different, sadder, more desperate. Thomas wondered if she somehow sensed that her world was about to change forever. The next morning would bring ceremonies, announcements, and decisions that would affect many lives. Thomas had always believed that doing the right thing was simple: follow orders, protect the royal family, and serve the kingdom. But now he realized that sometimes the right thing wasn't clear, and good people could be hurt no matter what choices were made. As dawn approached, Thomas prepared himself for what might be one of the most difficult days in the castle's recent history. That evening, after the formal dinner and dancing had concluded, Thomas found himself patrolling the castle corridors with a heavy heart. The foreign dignitaries had retired to their guest chambers, and the royal family had withdrawn to their private quarters. The castle had returned to its normal quiet, but Thomas could feel that everything had changed. He was walking past Princess Camilla's chambers when he heard the sound of quiet sobbing coming from within. Thomas stopped, torn between his duty to respect the royal family's privacy and his genuine concern for the princess's well-being. The crying was muffled, as if she was trying to muffle her grief with pillows or blankets, but the pain in those sounds was unmistakable. After several minutes of internal debate, Thomas knocked gently on the door. "Your Highness, it's Thomas. Is everything all right?" The sobbing stopped immediately, and he heard movement inside the room. When Princess Camilla opened the door, she had clearly made an effort to compose herself, but her red eyes and tear-stained cheeks betrayed her emotional state. "I'm fine." "Thomas," she said, her voice hoarse from crying, just tired from the day's events. Thomas looked at her with compassion. "Your Highness, if I may speak freely, you don't have to pretend with me. I know this has been an incredibly difficult day for you." Something in his tone must have conveyed his sincerity, because Princess Camilla's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Fresh tears began flowing down her cheeks, and she stepped aside to let him into her chambers. The room was beautifully appointed but felt cold and formal in the candlelight. Princess Camilla sat in a chair by the window, looking out at the moonlit gardens where she had once walked and dreamed of a different future. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. Thomas considered lying, but decided that honesty was what she deserved. "I discovered your meetings with Marcus yesterday. Captain Morrison explained the situation to me last night." Princess Camilla nodded, as if this confirmed something she had already suspected. "So everyone knew except me." "Everyone knew that while I was planning a future with Marcus, my father was arranging my marriage to a stranger." Your father was trying to protect you from pain as long as possible, Thomas offered gently, and he was hoping that perhaps a solution might present itself. What solution could there possibly be? Princess Camilla asked, her voice filled with despair. Marcus is a wonderful man, but he's not a prince. He can't offer political alliances or military support. In the eyes of the court, he's nothing. Thomas moved closer to the window, choosing his words carefully. He's not nothing to you, and sometimes love is worth more than all the political advantages in the world. Princess Camilla looked at him with surprise. You're a royal guard, Thomas. Your job is to support the crown and maintain order. Why are you saying things that sound almost like rebellion? Thomas thought about this question seriously before answering. My job is to protect the royal family. Sometimes that means protecting them from physical threats, but sometimes it means protecting their humanity. You're not just a princess, you're a person with feelings and dreams and the right to be heard. For the first time that day, Princess Camilla smiled genuinely. Thank you for seeing me as more than just a political asset. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both looking out at the peaceful gardens. Finally, Princess Camilla spoke again, her voice stronger than it had been earlier. I need to see Marcus, she said. I need to talk to him before everything becomes final. Thomas felt alarm bells going off in his head. Your Highness, that might not be wise. Prince Ferdinand is still in the castle, and if you were seen meeting with Marcus now— I don't care about Prince Ferdinand or what anyone else thinks, Princess Camilla said firmly. Marcus and I deserve the chance to say goodbye properly. We've never had the opportunity to be honest about our feelings without hiding or worrying about being discovered. Thomas understood her need for closure, but he also knew the risks involved. If you're determined to do this, then we need to be very careful about how it's arranged. Captain Morrison can't know, and neither can anyone else. Princess Camilla turned to face him fully. You'll help me? Thomas knew he was about to make a decision that could end his career and possibly put him in serious trouble with the crown. But looking at the pain in Princess Camilla's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to refuse. Yes, he said quietly, but we do this my way with proper precautions. They spent the next hour planning a secret meeting. Thomas would arrange for Marcus to be in the castle's rose garden at midnight, using a message delivered through Jakob the baker. Princess Camilla would slip out of her chambers after the castle had settled for the night. Thomas would stand guard to ensure they weren't discovered. As they finalized the details, Thomas couldn't help but think about the risks they were all taking. If they were caught, Princess Camilla would face her father's anger and disappointment. Marcus could be arrested or banished from the kingdom, and Thomas himself would likely lose his position and possibly face charges of helping to undermine royal authority. But as he looked at Princess Camilla's face, which showed hope for the first time since the morning's announcement, Thomas knew he was making the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing meant taking risks, and sometimes protecting someone meant helping them find peace rather than simply ensuring their physical safety. Are you sure about this? Thomas asked one final time. Princess Camilla nodded with determination. I need this chance to be honest with him, and to hear the truth from him as well. Whatever happens after tonight, at least we'll have had that. As Thomas prepared to leave her chambers to make the necessary arrangements, he reflected on how much his understanding of duty and loyalty had evolved in just 2 days. Sometimes serving the crown meant more than just following orders. Sometimes it meant helping the people you served find their humanity in impossible situations. That evening, after the formal dinner and dancing had concluded, Thomas found himself patrolling the castle corridors with a heavy heart. The foreign dignitaries had retired to their guest chambers, and the royal family had withdrawn to their private quarters. The castle had returned to its normal quiet, but Thomas could feel that everything had changed. He was walking past Princess Camilla's chambers when he heard the sound of quiet sobbing coming from within. Thomas stopped, torn between his duty to respect the royal family's privacy and his genuine concern for the princess's well-being. The crying was muffled, as if she was trying to muffle her grief with pillows or blankets, but the pain in those sounds was unmistakable. After several minutes of internal debate, Thomas knocked gently on the door. Your Highness, it's Thomas. Is everything all right? The sobbing stopped immediately, and he heard movement inside the room. When Princess Camilla opened the door, she had clearly made an effort to compose herself, but her red eyes and tear-stained cheeks betrayed her emotional state. I'm fine. Thomas, she said, her voice hoarse from crying. Just tired from the day's events. Thomas looked at her with compassion. Your Highness, if I may speak freely, you don't have to pretend with me. I know this has been an incredibly difficult day for you. Something in his tone must have conveyed his sincerity, because Princess Camilla's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. Fresh tears began flowing down her cheeks, and she stepped aside to let him into her chambers. The room was beautifully appointed but felt cold and formal in the candlelight. Princess Camilla sat in a chair by the window, looking out at the moonlit gardens where she had once walked and dreamed of a different future. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Thomas considered lying, but decided that honesty was what she deserved. I discovered your meetings with Marcus yesterday. Captain Morrison explained the situation to me last night. Princess Camilla nodded as if this confirmed something she had already suspected. So everyone knew except me. Everyone knew that while I was planning a future with Marcus, my father was arranging my marriage to a stranger. Your father was trying to protect you from pain as long as possible, Thomas offered gently, and he was hoping that perhaps a solution might present itself. What solution could there possibly be? Princess Camilla asked, her voice filled with despair. Marcus is a wonderful man, but he's not a prince. He can't offer political alliances or military support. In the eyes of the court, he's nothing. Thomas moved closer to the window, choosing his words carefully. He's not nothing to you, and sometimes love is worth more than all the political advantages in the world. Princess Camilla looked at him with surprise. You're a royal guard, Thomas. Your job is to support the crown and maintain order. Why are you saying things that sound almost like rebellion? Thomas thought about this question seriously before answering. My job is to protect the royal family. Sometimes that means protecting them from physical threats, but sometimes it means protecting their humanity. You're not just a princess. You're a person with feelings and dreams and the right to be heard. For the first time that day, Princess Camilla smiled genuinely. Thank you for seeing me as more than just a political asset. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both looking out at the peaceful gardens. Finally, Princess Camilla spoke again, her voice stronger than it had been earlier. I need to see Marcus, she said. I need to talk to him before everything becomes final. Thomas felt alarm bells going off in his head. Your Highness, that might not be wise. Prince Ferdinand is still in the castle, and if you were seen meeting with Marcus now, I don't care about Prince Ferdinand or what anyone else thinks, Princess Camilla said firmly. Marcus and I deserve the chance to say goodbye properly. We've never had the opportunity to be honest about our feelings without hiding or worrying about being discovered. Thomas understood her need for closure, but he also knew the risks involved. If you're determined to do this, then we need to be very careful about how it's arranged. Captain Morrison can't know, and neither can anyone else. Princess Camilla turned to face him fully. You'll help me? Thomas knew he was about to make a decision that could end his career, and possibly put him in serious trouble with the crown. But looking at the pain in Princess Camilla's eyes, he couldn't bring himself to refuse. Yes, he said quietly, but we do this my way, with proper precautions. They spent the next hour planning a secret meeting. Thomas would arrange for Marcus to be in the castle's rose garden at midnight, using a message delivered through Jacob the baker. Princess Camilla would slip out of her chambers after the castle had settled for the night. Thomas would stand guard to ensure they weren't discovered. As they finalized the details, Thomas couldn't help but think about the risks they were all taking. If they were caught, Princess Camilla would face her father's anger and disappointment. Marcus could be arrested or banished from the kingdom, and Thomas himself would likely lose his position and possibly face charges of helping to undermine royal authority. But as he looked at Princess Camilla's face, which showed hope for the first time since the morning's announcement, Thomas knew he was making the right choice. Sometimes doing the right thing meant taking risks, and sometimes protecting someone meant helping them find peace rather than simply ensuring their physical safety. Are you sure about this? Thomas asked one final time. Princess Camilla nodded with determination. I need this chance to be honest with him, and to hear the truth from him as well. Whatever happens after tonight, at least we'll have had that. As Thomas prepared to leave her chambers to make the necessary arrangements, he reflected on how much his understanding of duty and loyalty had evolved in just 2 days. Sometimes serving the crown meant more than just following orders. Sometimes it meant helping the people you served find their humanity in impossible situations. The hours leading up to midnight felt like the longest of Thomas's life. He had successfully delivered the message to Marcus through Jakob, who had understood the urgency without asking too many questions. Now Thomas found himself positioned near the entrance to the rose garden, every sense alert for any sign of discovery. The castle was quieter than usual, with most of the foreign guests having retired early after the day's festivities. But Thomas knew that some diplomats might still be awake, discussing the day's developments, and that other guards would be making their regular rounds. The timing had to be perfect. At 5 minutes before midnight, Princess Camilla appeared in the corridor leading to the garden. She had changed from her formal gown into a simple dark dress that would help her blend into the shadows. Her golden hair was hidden beneath a plain cloak, and she moved with the careful grace of someone trying not to make any sound. Thomas nodded to her as she passed, and she squeezed his hand briefly, a gesture of gratitude that conveyed more than words could express. He watched as she made her way to the garden, then positioned himself where he could observe both the main corridor and the garden entrance. When Princess Camilla entered the rose garden, Marcus was already waiting by the fountain in the center. Even from a distance, Thomas could see the emotion on both their faces as they saw each other. Marcus stepped forward and took Princess Camilla's hands in his, and they stood that way for a long moment, just looking at each other in the moonlight. Thomas turned away, feeling like he was intruding on something deeply private, but he kept his ears alert for any sounds that might indicate approaching danger. The castle remained peaceful around them, with only the distant sound of night birds and the gentle splash of the fountain breaking the silence. When Thomas glanced back toward the garden a few minutes later, he could see that Princess Camilla and Marcus were talking earnestly. Their voices were too quiet for him to hear their words, but their body language spoke volumes. Marcus was holding both of her hands, and occasionally, one of them would reach up to touch the other's face with gentle tenderness. About 10 minutes into their meeting, Thomas heard footsteps echoing from one of the main corridors. His heart began to race as he realized that someone was walking in their direction. He whistled softly, a signal he and Princess Camilla had agreed upon, to warn them of the approaching danger. Immediately, Princess Camilla and Marcus moved apart and sought hiding spots behind some of the larger rose bushes. Thomas positioned himself casually near a window, trying to look like he was simply conducting a routine patrol. Captain Morrison rounded the corner, carrying a lantern and looking tired but alert. Thomas felt his stomach drop. Of all the people who might have discovered them, the captain was the worst possible choice because he already knew about the situation between Princess Camilla and Marcus. "Thomas," Morrison said, approaching with a questioning look, "what are you doing in this area? Your patrol route doesn't usually include the gardens at this hour." Thomas had prepared for this possibility, but his mouth still felt dry as he answered, "I thought I heard something unusual, Captain. Probably just an animal, but I wanted to make sure." Morrison studied his face carefully in the lantern light. The captain had years of experience reading people, and Thomas worried that his nervousness might give him away. After what felt like an eternity, Morrison nodded slowly. "These are tense times," the captain said. "It's good that you're being extra vigilant. Have you seen anything suspicious?" "No, sir, nothing at all," Thomas replied, hoping his voice sounded steady. Morrison looked toward the rose garden, and Thomas held his breath. If the captain decided to investigate the garden thoroughly, he would almost certainly discover Princess Camilla and Marcus. The consequences would be severe for everyone involved. But after a moment, Morrison turned back to Thomas. "Continue your patrol, but don't venture too far from the main corridors. We can't afford to have guards scattered all over the castle when we're hosting foreign dignitaries." "Understood, Captain," Thomas said, saluting respectfully. Morrison walked away, his footsteps gradually fading as he continued his own rounds. Thomas waited several more minutes to ensure the captain was truly gone, before whistling the all-clear signal to Princess Camilla and Marcus. They emerged from their hiding spots, but the moment of danger had clearly affected them both. Princess Camilla looked pale and shaken, while Marcus appeared angry at the reminder of how precarious their situation was. Thomas watched as they came back together near the fountain. Their conversation became more intense, and he could see that they were discussing something important. Princess Camilla was gesturing expressively, and Marcus was shaking his head, as if disagreeing with something she was proposing. After about 20 more minutes, Thomas saw Marcus take Princess Camilla in his arms. They held each other tightly, and Thomas could see that both of them were crying. It was clearly a goodbye, final and heartbreaking. When they finally separated, Marcus kissed Princess Camilla's forehead gently, then walked quickly toward the garden's rear exit without looking back. Princess Camilla stood by the fountain for several minutes after he left, her hand pressed to her forehead where he had kissed her. When she finally returned to where Thomas was waiting, her composure was completely intact, but he could see the profound sadness in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered as they walked back toward the royal quarters. "That meant everything to me." Thomas nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He had witnessed something beautiful and tragic, and he knew that this night would stay with him forever. As he escorted Princess Camilla back to her chambers, he wondered if she had found the closure she was seeking, or if seeing Marcus again had made everything even more difficult to bear. What he didn't know was that the conversation he had witnessed in the garden had changed everything, and that Princess Camilla had made a decision that would affect not just her own life, but the future of the entire kingdom. The next morning brought unexpected developments that changed everything Thomas thought he knew about the situation. He was awakened before dawn by urgent knocking on his door. When he opened it, he found a young page with a message summoning him immediately to the king's private study. Thomas dressed quickly and made his way through the castle's quiet corridors, his mind racing with possibilities. Had someone discovered last night's secret meeting? Was he about to face serious consequences for his role in helping Princess Camilla? When he arrived at the king's study, he found not only King Robert but also Captain Morrison and, to his surprise, Princess Camilla herself. She was dressed in a simple traveling gown and held herself with a dignity that seemed different from her previous demeanor. More resolute, more certain. King Robert looked tired, as if he had been awake all night. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, and there were papers scattered across his desk. When he looked up at Thomas, his expression was unreadable. "Thomas," the king said, "please sit down. We have much to discuss." Thomas took the indicated chair, glancing nervously at Princess Camilla, who gave him a small, reassuring nod. Captain Morrison stood near the window, his face grave but not accusatory. "Last night," King Robert began, "my daughter came to me with a request that has changed all of our carefully laid plans. She has asked permission to refuse the marriage to Prince Ferdinand." Thomas felt his heart skip a beat. He looked at Princess Camilla, who met his gaze steadily. Whatever had transpired during her conversation with Marcus had given her the courage to take a stand that Thomas had never imagined possible. "Furthermore," the king continued, "she has presented me with an alternative proposal that, while unconventional, may actually serve our kingdom's interests better than the original alliance." King Robert stood and walked to a map hanging on the wall. "Princess Camilla has proposed that instead of marrying Prince Ferdinand, she will establish a new form of diplomatic relationship with his kingdom. She will serve as a permanent ambassador, creating stronger ties through cooperation rather than marriage." Thomas was amazed by the boldness of this suggestion. It was unprecedented for a princess to serve in such a role, but it showed remarkable political insight. "The genius of this proposal," Princess Camilla said, speaking for the first time, "is that it allows both kingdoms to maintain their independence while still benefiting from close cooperation. Prince Ferdinand, it turns out, was no more enthusiastic about our marriage than I was. He has his own romantic interests in his homeland." King Robert nodded. "When I presented this alternative to Prince Ferdinand this morning, he was greatly relieved. Apparently, he had been dreading the prospect of marriage to a stranger as much as Camilla had." Thomas began to understand the brilliance of what Princess Camilla had accomplished. She had found a way to escape an unwanted marriage while still serving her kingdom's political needs. But he wondered what this meant for her relationship with Marcus. As if reading his thoughts, Princess Camilla addressed the question directly. "Marcus and I spoke honestly last night about our situation. We both realized that our love, while genuine, was based partly on the excitement of secrecy and the romance of forbidden attraction. When we talked openly about building a real life together, we discovered that we want very different things." She paused, looking out the window toward the village where Marcus lived. "He wants a simple life with a family and a successful business. I want to serve my kingdom and use my education and position to make a difference in the world. We love each other, but we're not right for each other as life partners." Thomas felt a mixture of sadness and admiration for the maturity of this decision. Both Princess Camilla and Marcus had chosen to be honest about their feelings and realistic about their futures. King Robert moved to stand beside his daughter. "I am proud of Camilla for approaching this situation with such wisdom and courage. She has found a solution that serves everyone's best interests, including her own." Captain Morrison stepped forward. "Thomas, your discretion during this difficult time has been noted and appreciated. The way you handled the situation showed excellent judgment and genuine care for the royal family's well-being." Thomas felt relieved that his actions had been viewed positively, but he was more interested in what the future held for Princess Camilla. "Your Highness, when will you begin your new role as ambassador?" Princess Camilla smiled, and for the first time in days it was a smile filled with genuine excitement rather than resignation. "I'll be leaving for Prince Ferdinand's kingdom next month to establish the new diplomatic relationship. I'll spend several years there, learning their customs and helping to create new forms of cooperation between our lands." "And after that?" Thomas asked. "After that, I'll return home with experience and knowledge that will help me serve our kingdom in whatever capacity my father thinks best. Perhaps I'll continue in diplomatic roles, or maybe I'll find other ways to use what I've learned." King Robert placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Camilla has shown me that there are many ways to serve one's kingdom and family. Marriage is one path, but it's not the only path." As the meeting concluded, Thomas realized that he had witnessed something remarkable. Princess Camilla had faced an impossible situation and found a creative solution that honored her duty while preserving her autonomy. She had transformed a personal crisis into an opportunity for growth and service. Later that day, as Thomas resumed his regular duties, he reflected on everything that had happened. The foreign dignitaries departed with new agreements in place. Prince Ferdinand returned home with relief rather than disappointment, and Princess Camilla began preparing for a future that would be challenging but fulfilling. Thomas never saw Marcus again, but he heard through Jakob that the young man had successfully established his business and eventually married a village girl who shared his dreams of a simple, peaceful life. It seemed that everyone had found their proper place in the world. As for Princess Camilla, she proved to be an exceptional ambassador. Her intelligence, compassion, and diplomatic skills helped forge lasting peace between the kingdoms. Years later, when she returned home, she continued to serve as one of her father's most trusted advisors. Thomas often thought about the lessons he had learned during those few intense days. He had discovered that loyalty sometimes meant helping people find their own paths, rather than simply enforcing rules. He had learned that love takes many forms, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting someone go. Most importantly, he had seen that even in situations that seem impossible, creative and courageous people can find solutions that serve everyone's best interests. The story of Princess Camilla and Marcus became a legend in the castle. Though the details were known only to a few, it was remembered as a tale of love, duty, and the wisdom to know when to fight for what you want and when to accept what life offers instead.